Well, hey everyone, welcome to yet another Bible in 1 year. Today we're actually going to look at a pretty intense part of Scripture. Our reading is 2 Samuel 11 through 13 and Psalm 51, but I want to focus on 2 Samuel 12. Here we see David. He's confronted by the Lord through the prophet Nathan for his adultery with Bathsheba and for ordering the military commanders to leave her husband exposed in battle so that he would die. I mean, this is serious stuff. Not only committing adultery, but also murdering the husband of the one he committed adultery with. I mean, this is horrible. And so Nathan, he's speaking on behalf of the Lord, accuses David of all these things, despising the word of the Lord, doing evil in God's sight, because he struck this man with the sword. The sword will never depart from David's house. David didn't just despise the word of the Lord, but in verse 10, God says, "You despised me." And he goes on and says, "Though you did this thing in secret, I'm going to raise up evil against you, and it's going to be public." But then look at David's response in verse 13. He says this, "Then David said to Nathan, I have sinned against the Lord." Nathan replied, "The Lord has taken away your sin. You are not going to die. But because of this, you have shown utter contempt for the Lord. The son born to you will die." You see, I don't know about you, but when I hear this, I'm like, man, this is intense. I know some would say, isn't this overkill? Isn't that a steep price for sin? And there's really two characteristics of God that I want to point out. And here's the first one. The first is that God is a jealous God. In Exodus 34, verse 13 through 15, he says this, "But rather, you are to tear down their altars and smash their sacred pillars and cut down their Asherim. For you shall not worship any other God, for the Lord, whose name is jealous, is a jealous God." You see, many times when we hear the word jealous, we think that's not good. You're not supposed to be jealous. I mean, how many of you, if someone called you jealous, would you be like, thank you. I really work hard to be jealous. No one would do that. And I know many times people think, jealousy is incompatible with love. I mean, if God is jealous, how do we reconcile other parts of Scripture like we find in 1 John 4:16, where he says, "And so we know and rely on the love of God for us, for God is love." Scripture says that God is love, but also Scripture says in 1 Corinthians 13, love is patient, love is kind, and is not jealous. Love does not brag and is not arrogant. Okay, so here's these scriptures, and so how do you reconcile these two things? First, we must understand that both in Hebrew and in Greek, the word for jealousy can either be a positive thing or it can be a negative thing. We could do a deep dive into this, to be much longer, but there is a right jealousy and there's also a wrong jealousy. Right jealousy, it has its affection set on what rightfully belongs to it. Okay, let me just say that again because I was stuttering. Okay, right jealousy has its affection set on what rightfully belongs to it, but wrong jealousy, the object is on what does not belong to it. You see, the action of right jealousy is retaining, it's guarding, it's protecting what rightfully belongs to you, and for the reason of doing what is righteous. The action of wrong jealousy, it's about grabbing or taking what does not rightfully belong with the wrong reason of selfish gain. And so here, we not only see God as being jealous, okay, which is a good thing because we and all that we do rightfully belongs to him. But this leads me to my second characteristic that I want to focus on. It's not his jealousy, but it is his generosity. And so how do we see his generosity? You see, we see him take David from following the sheep and made him king. He delivered David from Saul, not only just one occasion, but on multiple occasions. He blessed David materially. I mean, he gave him the entire nations. God has ridiculously been generous to David. And it's not just in the past, but it's even now. I mean, remember what verse 13 said. It said this, "Then David said to Nathan, I have sinned against the Lord." Nathan replied, "The Lord has taken away your sin. You are not going to die." I mean, don't forget that the Old Testament penalty for adultery and murder it's to lose your own life. Now sparing David's life. That's what he's doing. You see, we don't see that as generosity, but many times it's easy to see that as just taking it for granted. You see, like David did, he drifted to take God's generosity for granted over time. So here's one of the questions to reflect on. When someone is consistently something towards you, what will many times happen? What will many times happen is that we take it for granted. You see, if someone is consistently kind, we tend to take their kindness for granted. If someone serves selflessly, we tend to take their service for granted. It's like my kids. When I am consistently buying them gifts, it becomes expected, and they tend to not see the generosity behind it. It becomes an expectation. And so the question is, have you taken for granted God's generosity towards you? So today I just want to encourage you, reflect on not only God's jealousy, how his affection is set on what rightfully belongs to him, but also reflect on his generosity. When we can hold these two things in its rightful place, you will see a natural propensity to give him the praise that he deserves. And if you don't have that propensity, reflect on those two things, his jealousy and his generosity. Hope you guys have a great day.